G'day, Deputy Speaker. Yes, I rise to comment on the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Corporations and Financial Services report, regulations of the use of financial services such as credit cards and digital wallets for online gambling in Australia. Deputy Speaker, I think this was good work by the committee, and I fully support the three recommendations from the report, which are: 1, the committee recommends the Australian Government prioritise the collection of data on online gambling in Australia, including the size and growth of the online gambling market, online gambling with credit, and the extent and nature of the associated harms. The second recommendation, which I also support, the committee recommends that the Australian Government develop and implement legislation to ban online gambling service providers of wagering, gaming and other gambling services, but not lotteries, from accepting payment by credit cards, including via digital wallets. And the third recommendation, which I support, the committee recommends that the Australian Government ensure that in designing and implementing recommendation 2, these measures have no adverse consequences for lotteries, including the activities of not-for-profits, charities and newsagents. Deputy Speaker, as good as all that is, regrettably though, it doesn't go nearly far enough. And we have an explosion of online and sports betting in this country, requiring the most conscientious attention by the federal government and the implementation of a raft of harm minimisation measures, because we don't want online and sports betting to become like poker machines. It's an emerging, well, it's been out there for some years now, but relatively emerging form of gambling, a rapid uptake, particularly by younger people and younger men. And we have an opportunity to intervene reasonably early in the evolution of this form of gambling to make sure that the most effective harm minimisation measures are in place. And, Deputy Speaker, the obvious thing to regulate is to require the Australian online gambling companies to link their pre-commitment arrangements in real time, so that when any gambler reaches their daily limit on one platform, then they are shut out of all platforms provided by Australian online gambling companies. We need to do that because at the moment we have this ludicrous situation where someone in good faith sets a daily limit with one gambling company, and when they reach that gambling limit, they just close that app and open the app of another Australian gambling provider. They gamble away, maybe they reach the limit on that one, and then close that app and go to the next app. And before you know it, a gambler, particularly if they're a gambling addict, has maxed out on all of the Australian companies, and they've lost much more than they can possibly afford. So if the companies were to link in real time their lockout arrangements, then that would go a very large way to protecting Australian gamblers. Now, Deputy Speaker, I've discussed this, and I won't name names or identify the company, but I have discussed this with leaders in the industry, and they tell me that the technology exists, it could be quickly done, and it would cost very little money. So here we have an initiative which I urge the government to embrace. The industry can do it, the public wants it, it won't cost much money, and it will protect gamblers, and in particular problem gamblers. Because remember, gambling addicts, when asked to set a daily limit when they're not in the zone, they will normally set a sensible limit. Gambling addicts, when they're not in the zone, they often know that they have an addiction and they want to do everything possible to deal with that addiction, and they will set sensible limits. It was the same way back in 2010, 11, 12, when I was campaigning for mandatory pre-commitment on poker machines. The knowledge that gambling addicts, in their lucid moments, set sensible limits. But if they're going to set a sensible limit, then we need to ensure that the industry implements that limit across all of the platforms. Also, Deputy Speaker, we really need to ban or at least rein in the advertising of these online gambling companies. Frankly, the community is sick to death of being bombarded with ads, particularly at either end of a sporting game, on a Sunday night or a Saturday afternoon or whatever. We have this ridiculous situation in Australia where gambling advertising is banned during G-rated television times, but there's an exemption, a carve-out, if you will, for gambling advertising either side of sports events, which of course is when an enormous number of children are actually watching the telly. They've turned on, they're sitting down there, they've got a bag of crisps, and they're about to, the game's about to start, and little children are being bombarded with gambling ads. And gambling ads that are associated with their sporting heroes and the code of sport they love. Obviously unacceptable. And Deputy Speaker, we've also got to stop predatory behaviour by these companies. I'm aware of gambling addicts who have shut down accounts with one online gambling company only to be cold called by an industry insider and to encourage them to set up an account with another gambling company, and then to eventually close down that account and to be cold called by someone within the industry who encourages them to open another account with another company. So there is clearly mischief going on within the online and sports betting sector. I don't know what it is, but somehow people are collecting lists of names and they're using that quite mischievously to prey on gambling addicts. We need to somehow clamp down on that. We also, Deputy Speaker, need to ensure that when an online gambling company is seeing gamblers gamble with what are the proceeds of crime, we need companies to be alert to that. And when it is discovered that an online gambler is gambling with the proceeds of crime, then the gambling companies need to be required to pay that money back to the victims of that crime. And in fact, Deputy Speaker, I moved a private member's bill in this place not that long ago that would have required gambling companies to repay the proceeds of crime, and regrettably, Deputy Speaker, it received no support from the government, no support from the opposition. Now, for the life of me, Deputy Speaker, I can't understand why that would be the case. I mean, we appreciate more broadly that proceeds of crime should be repaid, but not when it comes to the gambling industry, it seems. They're different. They shouldn't have that obligation, and I strongly disagree with that, and I condemn the government and the opposition for not supporting that private member's bill. Another bill that I have tried to progress in this place, which again, it's lapsed, it had received no support from the government and the opposition, was a ban on social casinos, those ridiculous games where people pay online to gamble, but they can't win anything in return. I mean, this is just bizarre. People are playing gambling-type games online. They're paying money to participate in the game, but there is no tangible winning at the other end to withdraw. Now, we might all think, oh, that's just ridiculous. Who on earth would gamble like that? Well, the fact is a lot of people gamble like that. Surely we should ban social casinos. And I make the point, again, I labour the point. Another private member's bill I've introduced into this place that received no support from the government or the opposition. Another example of how the gambling industry seems to have special status in this place and is treated absurdly favourably by governments and politicians. Deputy Speaker, I'm not going to give up though, and I have a private member's bill prepared which I will introduce into this place when I get an opportunity to ban loot boxes. Now, loot boxes, Deputy Speaker, is when you pay money for a so-called loot box. You pay money to win something to use in an online game, but you don't know what you're going to win until you paid your money and you open your virtual box to work out what you have won or that you've won nothing to use as a part of an online game. So I would have said, Deputy Speaker, that when you pay money to participate in a game of chance, during which you may or may not win a positive outcome, that's gambling by any definition. But yet loot boxes are legal in this country. So it'll be another test of the government, another test of the opposition, that when I move that private member's bill, whether or not they will support that. And I hope it's a test that they pass. And Deputy Speaker, I would also add that there are other good members of the Australian Parliament who are trying to do good things. For example, Sterling Griff currently has a private member's bill in the Senate that would basically do what the committee has recommended here. So why doesn't the government, supported by the opposition, get behind Senator Griff's private member's bill in the Senate that would basically prohibit credit card use? I mean, the work's done. All the government opposition have got to do is line up on the day. So, Deputy Speaker, good work by the committee as far as they went, but heavens, there's a long way still to go. And I urge again the government and the opposition to do the hard work and to help protect gambling addicts.